let's start from the beginning. A lot of fans think a Sonic is all about constant mind-numbing speed because Sega has drilled this into our heads for years, and unfortunately, a lot of people out there have fallen for it. But if you take a look back at the original, you'll eventually notice that it wasn't that fast. Now, they were going to make it faster, but too many of the kids that tried it before it sold were overstimulated, and they slowed Sonic down a bit to avoid motion sickness. I don't really think there's anything wrong with this game, though. This game was a platformer. Any speed you somehow managed to rack up was a reward for skillfully surviving the harsh platforming. And let me tell you, this game is hard. Not so hard that you can't get better with practice, but challenging to a point where you need a lot of practice. For one thing, the physics of this game were pretty wacky, but in a fun, cool way. Depending on your acceleration, how steep the slopes you were running along were, and exactly when you jumped, your kinetic energy would add up and propel you over great distances. But again, it all depended on your collected force. You could also let Sonic curl up into a ball to build up even more momentum by rolling down slopes, rather than simply running on foot all the time. The level designs were complex and sprawled out in many directions, and once you got the hang of this momentum thing, you could manipulate your surroundings and do all sorts of fun little things, kinda like parkour. You can also build up a tremendous amount of force and bounce off an enemy or item to send yourself soaring over the level. The more force you had built up before making contact, the more hang time you got. Personally, I don't think it's that much of an accomplishment on the player's part to do this and effectively skip most of the stage in its platforming, but just that you could was awesome. Just that it was possible to do things and go places where the developers probably never even intended for the player to reach because the system's physics were just that rewarding made this a wonderful game. But again, none of this felt automated in any way, save a couple of brief instances here and there. If you wanted to be fast, you had to be smart and work for it. The gameplay wasn't about speed. The bursts of speed here and there were just highlights that complemented the player's skill. Recently, there have been many speed junkies saying that this is their least favorite Sonic game. They hate stages like Marble and Labyrinth because they're apparently too slow. Well, they are a little claustrophobic since you're not out in the open like in most of the other stages, but the platforming is still amazing, and a lot of thought must have been put into this to prevent it from ever becoming too repetitive. There are also fans who despise having to be so calculative all the time, to catapult themselves off of a ledge or ramp at just the right speed, and just the right angle to make it over a chasm, because it is difficult to get it just right. They'd rather whisk through with little effort and have the game do all the work for them, like an interactive cutscene. For a long time, I've had a lot of difficulty with this game and its sequels, and it took me years to beat any of them. But once I had finally mastered these abilities, I could manipulate almost anything in the game to a point where the character and his movements became an extension of myself. I was having loads of fun. After years and years, I suddenly managed to beat all of the Genesis games over the course of a few days because of my newfound skill. The possibilities and ways to reach the end of a stage became limitless. It takes a hell of a lot of practice and effort to master this, but once you do, it becomes so much more satisfying than simply pressing a boost button to effortlessly stream through an unending string of loops and ramps with little thought put into the level design. Some think that platforming is something best left to Mario, and Sonic himself should be all about speed, rather than an intuitive mix of platforming and speed. I think Sega got it right, though. The music is mixed. A couple of tracks, like Labyrinth Zone's music, feel a bit bland and repetitive, to be quite honest. Many of these tracks, though, are strangely emotional, and I especially love the easygoing Starlight Zone music and, the dramatic final boss music. I mean, it sounds like the game is crying. Just another thing to love about this game. I also like the theme of nature versus technology. Scrap Brain Zone is a great glimpse of what we could become. Well, that's all I have to say about this one. Next time I'll talk about Sonic CD. Toodles!